Hello and welcome to Nebula Talks. Before we begin, we have a few updates and reminders for you. We would love to have you be part of our Nebula community. And you can do so by logging on to www.nebula.com, where you can join communities related to your area of interest, register for upcoming Nebula Talks, book one-to-one skylifts, and view other upcoming events. You can also take this opportunity to connect with fellow learners or the speaker by sending a connection request. When you connect with the speaker, you will be able to contact them directly as well as receive updates about their upcoming talks. Kindly note that during this session, you will not be able to switch on your camera or unmute your mic. To ask questions during the talk, go to the audience chat, type your question, and select Post Your Question. If your question has not been answered during the talk, you will be notified once it's been answered, or if your question has not been answered during the talk, you can go to www.nebula.com and spin a quest, and your questions will be answered. Thank you for joining us today. We hope this talk broadens your horizons and takes you to new learning heights. Hi everyone, welcome to today's Nebula Talk. My name is Sarah and today we'll be discussing time management strategies that you can use for the IELTS Writing exam. All right, so let's get straight into it and let's get started. While I share my screen, I have a poll for you guys, and here it is, sharing the poll now. And that is, what do you find most difficult about the IELTS exam? Okay, so go ahead and put in your answers. Okay, so let's just quickly go through the options that we have. So option number one, not having enough time to answer the question, or you're unable to fit all your ideas in the essay, or you're unable to understand the question, or another answer. If there's anything that's not listed here in this poll, go ahead and tell me in the comments below or in the chat below. All right, so most of you have said that you don't have enough time to answer the question, which is great because that's why we're doing today's Nebula Talk. All right, so first of all, let's just have a little bit of an introduction to the IELTS. Again, for those of you who are new to the IELTS, who have just heard about it and are unsure what it is, I'll tell you right now. And for those of you who already know about it, it will just be a quick recap for you. Okay, so IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System, and it's an exam for non-native English language speakers who are looking to work, study, or migrate abroad. All right, and the IELTS exam tests your 4 language skills, which are your reading, your listening, your speaking, and your writing. And today we're looking at the writing section. All right, so the writing section has 2 parts, or 2 tasks rather. There's task 1 and task 2. So for task 1, you have 20 minutes and you have to complete your task in 20 minutes and you have to write it within 150 words. All right. And academic section, writing section task 2, you'll have 40 minutes and 250 words. So it's the whole section together, but you're dividing it into 20 minutes and 40 minutes. And the time increases for task 2, where you have 40 minutes and you have to write 250 words. Okay, so just have a look at that. So the total time is 1 hour. Okay, so it's also important to understand what you're being assessed on and how you're being assessed. So the assessment criteria is the same for both. It's just that the only thing that changes is for task 2, instead of task achievement, it is task response. All right, but they basically mean the same thing. So let's just go through it. For task response or task achievement, how well you have answered the question, whether you've answered all parts of the question. So all parts would be task response for task 2. If there are 2 questions in there, how you've answered both, whether you've answered both, and how your ideas are structured. Then there's lexical resource, where the examiner will be looking at the wide range of vocabulary that you have used. So usage of a number of phrases, sentences, how you've put your sentences out there, that's what they'll be marking you on. Then coherence and cohesion kind of ties into task response and task achievement, where I said how your ideas flow in a logical order. So how well your answer is structured, the number of paragraphs that you have, whether it's clearly separated so that the examiner can see how your ideas are put on the page. And last but not least, grammatical range and accuracy, where they're looking at the presentation of grammar, whether you've used the correct grammar, correct spelling, correct sentence formations, things like that. So everything comes under this. So it's really important, like I just mentioned, to understand how you're being assessed so that while you're practicing, you will understand your areas where you need to focus and what you can work on as well. All right. Okay, now we're going to go into types of questions, and especially for this, for time management strategies, it's important that you know the types of questions that will appear on the exam. All right, so the first type of question, the types of questions that are listed here on the screen are for task number 1. So you could get any question that has a bar chart or a line graph or a pie chart or a process diagram or some kind of map, a table or multiple graphs. All right, so it's important that when you're practicing, you try each and every single one of them, and I will get into that as we go along. Okay, and the next one type of questions that you could face in task 2 are agree, disagree kind of questions, pros and cons, problem solutions, two-part questions. Okay, so again, it's really important to understand the kind of questions that could come up and practice those before your exam. All right, so now let's get into today's talk, where we're discussing a few time management strategies that you can use during your IELTS writing exam. Okay, so first of all, let's look at why we run out of time during the IELTS writing section. Okay, so going in line with the poll that I sent out, I asked you, what do you find most difficult? And a lot of you said that it's because you don't have enough time. Okay, so let's look at why we run out of time. So first of all, it could be lack of preparation, or second of all, lack of planning. So lack of preparation, what happens is when we're practicing for the exam, we think we might just, go into the exam without preparing. Usually this preparation takes about more than 1 week or 2 weeks or even a month if you need it. So if you're not prepared for this exam, especially for the writing exam, then it will be a problem, because once you face the exam, when you're there on the day, if you're not practicing the different kind of questions that we just discussed, if you're only sure about one kind of question, if you've only been practicing maybe bar charts and pie charts, but on the day you get a line graph, you won't know how to answer that. Or for task 2, if you get an agree disagree question, but you've only practiced maybe problem and solution questions or giving your opinion kind of questions, there it would be a problem because you haven't prepared enough. All right, so it's very important that you set out time during your day to practice and make sure that you practice all the different types of questions. Again, I'll go into that, and make sure that you're well prepared before you sit the exam. The second of all is lack of planning. So this type of question or this type of task involves a little bit of planning in terms of structuring your essay and how you're going to put your ideas in. So what happens is when you go into the exam, maybe you won't spend enough time to plan out your essay. You might just feel like, okay, 2 minutes is enough, because already you have the stress, already you might have the nervousness and this feeling scared, or you get anxiety or something like that would kind of happen during the exam. So you just feel like, okay, I have to get through this exam because there are other sections that I have to attempt. And you just spend maybe 2 minutes planning, and you have an hour to write the exam, remember that. But you only spend 2 minutes of planning, and then what happens is you might, while you're writing your paper, you'll have other ideas that come in. You say, oh, okay, I'm going to add this idea in. And then the consequence of that would be either you will not be able to finish your essay, or you would not be able to develop your ideas enough. So you'll just have a whole bunch of ideas, and maybe 1 or 2 are developed, and the rest of the ideas will just come in, and they won't have backing up, like examples or an explanation as to why they are there. And as well as they might just not make sense after a while. And you would have spent so much time, unnecessary time, adding in this information, and then it could affect your band score. And also when they're assessing, when the examiner's assessing, it could affect all the 4 criterias. So we're going to talk about that next. All right. So strategy number 1, in accordance with preparation, practice. This is something that I emphasize a lot during all of my talks, is that practice, practice, practice. It's very important. So again, going back to the types of questions, it's very important that you practice every single type of question. Make sure you leave time out of your day, if when you're preparing for the exam, to practice each and every type of question. All right, so make sure you're practicing bar charts, how to answer them. Make sure you're practicing how to answer process diagrams, how to answer line graph kind of questions, what you're going to put in. And second of all, for task 2, how you're going to practice writing the different kinds of essays. And make sure that while you're practicing, you're looking at how much time you're spending for each task. So maybe you might just practice task 1. All right, you'll complete all task 1 kind of questions, and you should time yourself. Make sure you're timing yourself. 20 minutes is the given time that we say you should spend on task 1. So try answering, see how long you take to answer task 1. So at the beginning, you might take maybe, let's say, when you're practicing, that is, an hour to answer it, just to get all your thoughts together, read the question, write things down. And then slowly, slowly, you might start taking 40 minutes, and then 30 minutes, and then finally 20 minutes. All right, same thing goes when you're practicing for task 2. All right, you might spend, again, maybe an hour for task 2 for each type of question, and then gradually reducing the time to maybe 40 minutes. And there, play around with your timings. And once you practice enough, maybe you don't have to follow the 20-40 rule. Okay, see which is important, which task takes time, which question type takes time, and accordingly plan your schedule, and then bring that into the exam so that you're fully confident to answer the question on the day. Okay, all right. Strategy number 2 is planning. Now, when we're talking about planning, again, bringing in the time and structure, but here we mean planning your structure. All right, so each essay has a kind of structure that you can follow, which makes it easier. Now, on the day of the exam, don't spend too much time writing it down. Make sure you have it in your head, and we'll go through each one as well. Have that structure, that format in mind, so that when you're going to write the exam, you can just put it out in little bullet points, little notes, and then fill in. Okay. And also, when you're planning, when you're practicing your plan, make sure that you are also bringing in to consideration planning for each section that you have in your format. All right, and focus on that one section. Make sure you know what kind of information you're putting in that section. So for example, let's just take an example of task 2. All right, if you're having an opinion kind of question that you have to face, make sure that you have structured out how you're going to present the opinion. So you might say you'll have your introduction. Again, we'll go through the format. You might have your introduction, and then you'll say, maybe, for example, some people agree with this statement. And then the next paragraph would be a disagree, and then what you think. If the question asks, what do you feel? Then you'll be adding that into yours. So make sure you know how you're planning it. So here's an example. All right, so for task 1, this also coincides with timing as well. So maybe you can spend 3 minutes to find key features and plan your whole essay. All right, so you go through the question, underline whatever keywords there are, see what the question is asking you, and then plan your essay. Then write the overview. Take about 5 minutes to write the overview. So in task 1, what will happen is you just get some sort of graph representation, and you'll just have to pick out the key features and explain that. All right, and that one, there is just an overview. It's basically just a summary. So there's no there's just one little paragraph for introduction, and then you have the body. There's no conclusion. So it should just take 5 minutes. And then write specific details in the paragraph. So that's 10 minutes. So that's what I said. The next paragraph would be your body paragraph. You could maybe have 2 or 3 paragraphs describing the specific details that you see in task 1. So maybe spend 10 minutes doing that. and then 2 minutes to error check. So make sure that you're going back, leave those 2 minutes, and go check your spelling, your grammar, your punctuation, capitalized letters. It depends how you're writing it. And make sure you just go and do a proofread. Okay, it's very important because what happens is spelling, grammar, all those come under the lexical resource band, and you don't want to lose marks because you didn't leave time to check your essay. All right, so make sure you're doing that. Same thing goes for task 2. Maybe you can spend 5 minutes planning, okay, and then 5 minutes writing your introduction. And after that, 10 minutes to write your body paragraph number 1, 10 minutes to write your body paragraph number 2, then 5 minutes to write your conclusion, and then again, another 5 minutes for error checking. If you would like to change this around, you can, especially when it comes to the error checking, maybe that last 7 minutes that you want to spend error checking both of them, you can do that as well. This is just a simple guide. Okay, so you can see that if you add this up, this will come up to 20, and this would come up to about 40 minutes, right? So make sure that you kind of divide your time accordingly when you're practicing so that you'll be able to complete your exam. Okay? All right. Strategy number 3, very simple. Count line by line. Now, what I mean by this is when you're writing, okay, you have a word limit. So task 1 is 150 words and task 2 is 250 words. So what happens is, as you can see before, okay, there's no time to count. And that might come under the error checking, but at the last minute, you might not think about whether you've undershot the word count or overshot it or whatever it is. Okay, remember there is a word limit and you have to hit that target. So task 1 again, 150, and task 2, 250. Okay, and if you go under that, there is negative marking for that. So make sure that you do hit that word count limit. Okay, anything above is fine. But the only thing that happens is when you go above the word limit, like maybe for task 1, if you do 200 words or 250 words, and for task 2, you do 300 words or 350 words, what happens is you would have spent so much time doing that. So you might not have left enough time. If you're doing task 1 first, you might not leave enough time to complete task 2, or if you're doing it vice versa, if you're doing task 2 first, and then you spend a lot of time on that, you might not have enough time for task 1. So make sure, this is where counting line by line comes in. You won't have enough time to count each and every single word. So when you're practicing, practice counting line by line. So see how many words you write on one line and then count the lines. Okay, so let's say you write 10 words per line, you'll be able to calculate how many words you've written in total. So you don't spend so much time at the end where you could be using that to write your essay or make the changes that you need to change. All right. Okay, so these actually were the 3 strategies that have come up to manage your time well during the IELTS writing exam, okay, for task 1 and task 2. All right, so if you follow these, you'll be able, but I think the most important ones would be practicing. Okay, again, I cannot emphasize that enough. Practice the different types of questions that are there for the exam. Again, you won't be getting all of them, it's just one of each. So make sure you practice that and then also follow the format. Practice following the format that we just spoke about and how much time you spend for each paragraph and how much time you spend for each task. Again, it might vary from person to person, so find what's best for you and make sure you're able to complete the task in time. So when you're practicing, make sure by the end of it, like we discussed, for task 1, start with an hour, and task 2, start with an hour and gradually go down to the 20 minutes for task 1. And for task 2, gradually go down to the 40 minutes, okay, so that you can complete the exam in 1 hour. So then when you're practicing, once you're confident with all the question types, then practice the whole exam as a whole. Maybe you would say you spend 1.5 hours or max 2. Give yourself 2 hours to complete the whole exam and then gradually reduce it, 1 hour 40, 1 hour 30, 20, and so on till you get an hour, until you're able to answer and finish the paper satisfactory, putting all your points in under 1 hour. All right. With that, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and type them in. Okay. All right, if there's anything about the poll that we've missed, what else you find difficult about the IELTS exam, go ahead and type that in. All right. Just waiting for a couple of questions. Okay. Some of the questions that we've been getting in on the website as well was little questions like, can I write in pen or pencil for the exam? For the writing exam especially, let's just look at that since we're discussing the writing exam. Can I write in pen or pencil? So it's best that you write your exam, the whole IELTS exam, but if we look at the writing exam, in pencil, solely because it's easy. If you make a mistake, all you have to do is erase it and it won't look as messy. Whereas if you're with a pen, you're probably like crossing out your mistakes, and there'll be a whole bunch of lines and marks and things like that, and it won't look very presentable to the examiner. And if the examiner can see a whole bunch of crosses and things like that, you might miss out on marks. So it's best that you write in pencil. It's a bit more cleaner and it's a bit better. So make sure you do that. Also, another thing about how the scoring works is that each criteria, like we saw task assessment or task response, lexical resource, cohesion and coherence, and grammatical accuracy, right? Each of those are scored from 0 to 9 on the band scale. Okay, so each one gets a score and then it's averaged out, and then you will get your final score. All right, that will be the final band score. That works for task 1 and for task 2, and then it's averaged out. Okay. All right. While we wait for some more questions to come in. Okay. So again, going back to the poll question, again, if the next one, because we've already discussed not having enough time to answer the question, what about unable to fit all my ideas in the essay? So here what happens is it's very easy if we don't have a plan, or even if we do have a plan, that suddenly we'd want to add a whole bunch of ideas in. So that's why we leave that time for planning and make sure you just focus on maybe the main ideas that you want to include and nothing else. Try not to add in so many ideas, because what happens is you won't be able to develop those ideas and you might not leave enough time to finish the task. So make sure while you're planning, that's why the plan is very important as well. While you're planning, you just focus on the ideas that you have on the paper and just leave it. Again, it doesn't really matter. It's just for the exam to test your English. So you don't have to fit in all your ideas. The examiner is really just looking at how you presented it in terms of English language. All right. Again, the next one from the poll is unable to understand the question. So that's why practice is important. Go through a whole bunch of past papers, go through each question type, read and understand what they're asking you to do. So go line by line, pick out the keywords in it, and make sure you've practiced enough so you know how to answer the question. Again, you might not know on the day exactly what's happening. So maybe it's a process diagram. You might not, if it's a man-made process of making bricks, again, the examiner doesn't expect you to understand or know how the brick making process is. So it's not necessary that you have to go and read a whole bunch of things and get that understanding. Just the information is presented there for you. So just pick out those the keywords, key information, and write about that. Same goes for task 2. You don't have to get too flowery with your language or too descriptive as well. Exactly what is being asked, just do that. Okay? All right. Okay, if we don't have any more questions coming in, I think we'll call it a day and end the talk here. I hope today's talk was insightful for you. If you did learn something from it, do share it with your friends. If they are also practicing for the IELTS exam, you can share this. Once the recording is available, you will be notified so you can go back and go through this talk again. Also, you can take this opportunity to connect with other learners that you see during the talk, as well as connect with me so that you're well informed about the next upcoming talks and also the upcoming events that are happening. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you for the next talk.